Now, a hollow wall or a table bed are near perfect places for growing the dwarf miniature plants like the alpines or mountain flowers that would really be lost in the rough and tumble of the main shrub borders. The fact that in my garden it makes the right sort of division between the patio on one side and the garden on the other is an added bonus. And it's filled with a good, sharp, well-drained compost. Just like any other feature in the garden, the right growing medium for the right plants. And for alpines, it needs to be free draining and yet moisture retentive. And the great virtue of hollow walls and table beds, you don't really need a garden. All you need is a convenient space near the house. Because what you're doing is creating a mini garden. You're providing ideal growing conditions for the plants which you select. I planted a breccia, which I know isn't uncommon, but it makes a colourful way of blending patio and table bed and stone wall together. And the Houseleeks, because there's a Yorkshire tradition with Houseleek, that if you have those growing either on the roof or anywhere near the house, then lightning won't strike it, which is a safeguard that I'm quite happy to take advantage of. And then the Cotoneaster thymifolia, it's a little, very, very prostrate Cotoneaster that hugs the stones, and that's covered any deficiencies in my rock work. And snow in summer, well, I let that loose in the rock garden once, and it took me 3 years to clear it all out again, because in the garden proper it's a pernicious weed. But here I can keep it under control in the hollow wall. Next door to that, a little native plant, a little native potentilla, and then one of the milkworts, the grandiflora form of the milkwort, which flowers right through from the middle of April, right through until the autumn time. And then the saxifragas, which, of all the plants that I grow in the hollow wall, are my favourites. And when they're grown like that, under very free drainage conditions, the massive flowers they produce is absolutely unbelievable. And to train along to marry the shrub border in front of the dry stone wall into the rest of it, a clematis, one of the alpine clematis, Clematis macropetala, that's the pink form called Markham's pink, and there's a full stop at the end of the wall, a little Noah's Ark pine, Juniperus communis compressor. And working on the principle that you can't ever have too much of a good thing, at least in gardening, there at the other end of the hollow wall there's a space next to the steps, and that's just about the right size for a table bed. And thinking about the dimensions of the bed, well, I want to match up with the edge of the steps. So, along like that. Back into there like that. That gives me a spade length exactly, made to measure. Now I'm going to dig out the topsoil to about 6 inches, because I want to improve the drainage of the table bed and provide the wall with a sure foundation. Next step, bring the stones. You can use any sort of stone. Any stone that's readily available and cheap in the area, but because I live in an area of dry stone walls, I'm using dry stone, because I don't want anything in the garden to look out of character. If I'd used properly worked stone, it would have stood out like a sore thumb. You don't have to bother too much about whether the wall's going to hold itself up, because you're going to hold it up by putting soil in behind it. But try and build so it looks reasonably pleasant. Bed the stones firmly, and if they don't fit very well, get your spade. It's strange how in a wall a stone always looks to be flat all round until you start to build with it, and then you find that it isn't. If you start off with the whole thing level, it's much easier to keep it level all the way up. That's providing a good base. Any deficiencies, like that, fill in the cracks. When you're building a table bed, always fill in the cracks between the stones with soil. It's like using I suppose it acts in the same way as cement, but I use it for a different reason, though, because all those crevices, those holes in the stonework, I'm going to fill up with things like Sempervivums. All stones have a bed. See, if you look at that, this is the face, and that, if you look at the face, it's leaning back just a fraction, just a little bit on the tilt. Therefore, that's the bed. That's the way it goes in on that side, with that face tilting back, because it'll put a little bit of pitch on the wall, so the top is fractionally narrower than the bottom, and that way it stands firm. When you put broken stone in as a drainage basis to stop the bed getting waterlogged, you must cover the rough stone with something that will stop the fine mix that you put to grow the alpines on, washing down and blocking the drainage. Now, I'm using peat, but you can use upturned turfs, you can use leaves raked up in the borders, or you can use moist newspaper, anything that will just stop that fine mix washing down. And then you start to cover it with some of the soil that was dug out. And you firm it down, and that'll give you the right beginning. I've got to the stage where I want to put some plants in, but I'm making certain first that I firm the soil down behind the stones. It's very easy when you're building with uneven shaped stones to leave air pockets. And I want the plant roots to go through the wall when I put them in, and I want them to meet soil, not air pockets. So I take a bit of care, because, oh, if you pick the right sort of plants, like the Cobweb Houseleek. I think the Cobweb Houseleek is probably the best description ever. Sempervivum Arachnoideum. It means spider webby. And that, when I put it into the crevice in the stone, will spread out into a great rosette there and then eventually flower. That's where it's going to go. Sitting in there, and because I want to make certain it gets the best possible start, I've mixed up a 7-3-2 mixture. Lots of sharp sand. That's 7 of loam, and 3 of very sharp sand, and 2 of peat. It's really the basis of the John in his compost, but without the fertilizer. So knock that out of its pot. Not a very big root, you see, because these, I've seen them living in the moss on the roof of a house. Just pop it in like that. Much easier to do it as the building work proceeds than to try them, stuff them in little narrow crevices once you've finished. Oh boy. That really is something. It is a pretty little plant, that. And it'll spread along the crevices, you see. I've only got one more layer of stone to put on. So I've got to think now about the compost I'm going to put the plants into. Now I need very sharp drainage around the neck of the plant, because you don't want water hanging where it'll cause soft rot in the winter. So I'm mixing up 7 loam, 3 sand, 2 peat, but I'm putting extra sand into this one. So you've got a free draining mixture, you've got a slightly richer one so the roots can dive into it once they get the 3 draining mixture, and then I've got perfect drainage down below. And this mixture is exactly the same as the one I used when building the hollow wall. You needn't mix it as evenly as you'd mix compost. And then just that little bit of brushing soil off stones that puts a twinkle in its eye. Now, I started by digging out the foundation. I put the big stones down at the bottom, gradually coming up to the smaller ones. I tried as far as I possibly could to cut the stones that needed cutting so the bruised surface was hidden. I overlapped the joints. I put one or two plants that like to be baked by the sun into the crevices, and they will spread out over the face of the rockwork. And I filled in with the proper compost for the things I'm going to grow. So, that flat surface there is uninteresting. I want to contour it a little bit. And the way I do that, I've saved one or two of the pretty stones. They really are pretty stones. I've bruised them a bit, thrown them in and out of the wheelbarrow. But that, by any language, is a pretty stone. I would hate to try and build it into a wall, because it's what we call a cobble. It's all curved. But it's got lovely little strata lines and fissures. Bed them in so those weathered tops show. Remember, this mixture is very, very well drained. So if you get dry weather, when the plant roots are under the stones, they'll find moisture there. You get little areas of shade too. That is a bonny little trefoil. It really is. A little bit of thought about where they're going, but the best thing to do really is to think of the plant, think of the context it likes to be in and where it'll grow best, and put it there, and usually that makes the best picture. The first one I'm going to put in is the little poppy, tucked in there against the green of the stone. Dainty little beautiful thing, fragile. And the buds are attractive too, with the blue hairs all over them. Tuck him in there where he's got a bit of shelter. You almost feel them say, home, when you get them in there. See the reason for the stones now too, they give them that little bit of close environment. Now then, I think to grow over, that was one of the stones I had to bruise a little bit to get it to fit. So, when I come down the path, I've come down those steps many, many times in the course of a day in my doings about the garden. So something colourful, something that's fragrant all the time. And what could be better than that? Little dark flowered thyme. To grow over the stones, it'll love the hot sunshine there. And these are, that one you raise from seed, the poppy. The thyme, little pull-offs. Little pieces that you pull off because it roots as it goes. And then grow them on. None of these plants are wildly expensive. I'll just persuade him that it's better to grow over the stones than grow into the bed itself. Lovely. Now then. That's a seedling from that very handsome saxifraga on the other side of the path. You know, contented plants do spread seed all over the place. And I just dig them up. Anything that offers itself like that for my appreciation is more than welcome. Not just because it saves me money, but because I know its quality. And something from Africa. I think this plant comes from the Drakensberg Mountains. And yet if you give it conditions of good drainage and full sun, it's perfectly happy in an English climate. You know, we really curse our climate, but it enables us to grow such a vast range of plants. Now it wants to be warm and sun-baked. possibly there, and it wants to be where I can have a quick look at it every time I go down the steps. It's much easier planting something like this than messing about bent double in the border. Now that is very easy to propagate because it spreads, and all you do is take your trowel and nick a bit off the side when you want some extra, pot it up and grow it on for a little bit. Now that's one that later on, come the winter, I'll get some of the sharp granite chippings that I mixed into the compost, and I'll spread it right over the top of that so the whole of the crown of the plant's protected. Because we do get some belting frosts up here. Now these, they grow stolons. I'll knock it out and then get a better look at it. They grow like a rhizome. See that great fat stem there? And all you do is cut that off when it's flowered and pot it up and it roots. You've got a new plant entirely. That is Primula marginata with the scalloped leaf edge and this lovely dusting of golden, what they call farina, the powder on the leaf. I'm going to put that over there because it likes to get its toes down between crevices in the stones. That grows in the maritime Alps, in crevices in the stones on the shady side of rocks or even bridges. Had a lovely foliage plant, and that has the choicest, most delicate lavender blue primrose flowers you ever could wish to see. And there you are, my handsome. Such delicate, dainty little plants they are. Genista, pilosa, that's the one they call superba. And now the polygala. Well, that one goes over in that corner. An interesting plant, that, because it flowers over many, many months. Little dark magenta purple, I think, with just a tinge of yellow. Now, the Cotoneaster, a little flat one that's made such a lovely picture of the bed over the other side of the path. I just pulled a piece off with the roots on. And what I want to do is pop that in there and make it grow. Huh. Make it grow, persuade it to grow. Over the edge of the bed and across that piece of flagging and a little way up the side of the greenhouse. I take a special pride in anything that's homegrown. A lot of my plants are. The roots are well through. Daphne retusa. And I want to tuck that one in where it gets a bit of shelter. And that has off-white flowers flushed with purple and the most delightful scent. Another scented plant. This really is. I know I've got a lot of favourites and I keep saying it's a great favourite of mine. But this little dianthus, la boubrille. Now I'm going to have that one at the front. Near the thyme, you imagine a mixture of scent of dianthus and thyme. All cloves and the sharp, acrid aroma from the thyme. I've got a feeling I'm going to like this table bed. And the enjoyment that you get out of planting it, already the work of breaking the stones and nipping my fingers and shoveling the gravel in's forgotten because there's a picture taking shape. the sedum, well, it likes a hot sun-baked position, and that's just about the hottest spot I can afford. I like it. It grows like smoke once you get it in. All you've got to do is pull those little rosettes come off. Pull them off and stick them in sand and their root. Got to handle it very carefully because it is extremely brittle. Sedum Spathulifolium. Blanco, to give it its full title. Need something over the corner in the back there. And a phlox. So I do like the alpine phlox. They are the most gorgeous flowers. They make the garden vibrate. Fuerteventura vernanana. It's got one lingering flower. But you can see how many it had all the way around. This lovely, joyful yellow. Like a titchy buttercup, yes, but not many flowers prettier than a buttercup. And that one's going to go down in there. Because hopefully it'll flower round about the same time as the primula. And yellow and lavender blue should be a handsome combination. I can grow that from this one from cuttings or from seed. Don't get very big. They're all titchy little treasures, these. Dainty little poppets. And campanulas. You can't do without them. They are truly a flower of the summer. And I grow great masses of them. This is a little tiny one. If I planted that even in a choice rock garden, it would be lost in the rough and tumble of phloxes and fabricia and stuff like that. So a table bed is really perfectly suited to it. It goes over there, in that little point there. Just take my sedum cutting to root. Mustn't leave those behind. Now, I know there's lots and lots of spaces left in there, but you've got to give the plants time to grow, and I don't want to fill it up completely, because I know fine that I'm going to see other things that I absolutely must have. And I tend to buy things that I absolutely must have and then find a place to put them in. And anyway, it looks beautiful now. I don't need worry. Nice.